If you never master the art of sales calls, you're never going to make the significant healing difference in income that you desire. Mastering this skill is critical to creating that significant income and impact. Sales is service. It is the very first step in serving your clients to create that transformation. It's not enough to be a great coach with a lot of credentials. You can be the best health coach in the world. But if you cannot guide someone from interest into action and bring them into your container of transformation, nothing happens. No client, no income, no impact. And many health coaches resist sales. They don't want to be salesy. Well, the truth is, you don't need to be salesy. But if we don't master this skill, your people, the people you could have served, are missing out on your healing gifts. But the great news is when you do master this skill and you lead with love and you follow what I like to teach as a loving invitation call framework, making it step by step, you boost not only your confidence, but your conversions too. So if you're ready to master this art of sales calls so that you can make the difference you know you were meant to make, then let's dive in and examine the three phases of this sales call so that you can approach them with confidence. And this is the same process that I teach our health coaches at the Health Professional Academy so they can create six and multiple six-figure health coaching practices, even if they've never sold a thing ever before. It's about coming from love and being diagnostic. I'm leveraging my medical background here, and it's proven to work for me and those that I've taught. So the first step is really the introduction, the first phase. It's important to set it up right. So some of the success of the sales call happens before you even get onto a call with that person. I am really a fan of Zoom for this purposes. It allows people to be connected wherever you are in the world. But the one thing that I'm going to say is if you're going to be connecting on Zoom, you want to make sure that they can be in a place where they're not going to be distracted, where they're at their computer and they can focus on what you're saying. Because on this call, you're going to dive deep into their problem, what they're looking for. It's diagnostic. You don't want to be doing this call while they are driving in a car or while they're distracted chasing after children. I know because I used to make all of these mistakes myself when I was a health coach. I remember doing a sales call with someone who was shoe shopping with their kids. That's not going to work because she was telling Johnny to get back over here and talking to the salesperson if they had a size 11. And so that's not going to work. So you want to set it up correctly when you and they can be 100% focused on them and what their concern is. Sometimes that means you want to do a communication, a quick call beforehand, or some kind of communication so that you set that up so that you have a block of time, at least an hour, undistracted, so that you can really get to the bottom of this. The next thing that you want to do is you want to create that connection, that rapport. Still, this is all in the introduction, first phase of our three-phase process. One way to connect is smiling, making eye contact, and making people feel at ease and at home. Having cameras on goes a long way in doing that. So you want to make them feel comfortable and you want to welcome them. And then you want to set the stage. Now, as a medical doctor, I was a medical doctor for 25 years. And specifically, I spent years doing ultrasound. I was an ultrasound radiologist. And a lot of times I would have to run into the room and I would be doing vaginal ultrasounds. And very quickly, I was really intimate with these patients. And so, one of the skills that I had built, and you will have built a skill set too in your former life of what you've done, is that I had an ability to quickly establish rapport because I always wanted my patients to feel comfortable and not assaulted and but we also didn't have a lot of time in that practice, as you can imagine. So you want to quickly establish rapport and comfort level. So again, eye contact, cameras on, smiling, establishing, hey, I have this hour now to devote 100% to you. Do you have this time? And just establishing that. If they only have 5 or 10 minutes, it's best to reschedule. If they only have 35 or 40 minutes, I would also reschedule. We're going to dive deep into it. And if you can't get through the whole process, it's not helpful to just get through part of the process. So you want to make sure that we're setting the appropriate environment to set you and them up for success. So that's the first part. So now the other thing that is unique, unlike in the doctor's office, they don't know what's going to be happening. So all the more reason we want to make them feel comfortable. In the doctor's office, you know the gig. You have an appointment, you go to the desk, you give them their information, maybe you share a little bit of what your concern is. They have you take a seat, you get called in, you talk to the doctor, you tell them what's going on. They'll ask you some questions, they'll do an exam, and then they'll send you for a test, give you a prescription, etc., etc. We know the gig, we know how that works. But as a health coach, talking to someone online or even in person for that matter, people don't know what this is. And you also want to make sure that this is different. This is not like just like a friendly chit chat with your buddy, with your girlfriend, where you just, how are you? What are you up to? What's been going on with your life? Did you hear about this on that in the news? This is not that kind of conversation. And so if you're having that kind of conversation like you would have with someone in another setting, then that's why they're not converting into clients. And that's why you can't ask for money because that's not what we do when we're talking with friends in that way. So you want to be a professional, set up the framework right, and bring them in. And they can be friends and they can be family, but you want to set up a specific time and have them have that hour focus where you can help them to the best of your ability. And they will get benefit just out of this conversation alone. This is a clarifying, leading with love conversation where you can really help this person, whether or not you invite them into your program. So, the first thing that you want to do is uh, share how this gig works. So, you say, here's what's going to happen. So, you want to take the loving lead. Do not engage in chitty chat about the weather or politics or anything else, because if they're asking you conversations right off the bat and you guys are going back and forth, that's not a sales call. That's not going to lead to bringing them into your container of transformation. So instead, you take the loving lead. Pretend they've just walked into your doctor's office, virtual doctor's office, and you're going to let them know what's happening because this is a different environment. And you're like, here's what's going to happen. So you can say, hey, Mary, it's so nice to see you here. I have this hour now. Do you? And they'll say yes. And you're like, okay. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to start off by asking you a bunch of questions. And I teach a diagnostic dozen. So I say about a dozen questions. And then I'll let you know what I've got going on over here. And then at the end, uh, you and I can decide, knowing where you're at right now and what you're looking for, what is the best way to get you there? And that can look like all sorts of things. Sometimes you're just looking for a thumbs up and a nod that you're on the right track. Sometimes I know of someone or something that might be just what you're looking for, and I can refer you appropriately. And sometimes there's something that I have. And at the end, you can ask me any questions that you want. How does that sound? That sounds good. Okay, let's go. So now we've got the framework. So the person who's asking the questions is in charge of the conversation. So if you get on a call with somebody And we don't take the loving lead. And then they just start firing questions. How much is it? What do you do? How many days you work? How many modules? Those answers to those questions are not helpful for them. They don't know that because they don't know the process and how this works. But that's our job to set up the framework so that this can work well. Sometimes, occasionally, you'll get an alpha person, a real, they won't let you take the loving lead. They just want to bulldoze through. They're used to just taking charge to a fault. So that's great that they lead, but in this scenario, we got to find out some more information from them first before we can accurately determine, can we help them? Do we want to help them? Do they want our help? Do they need our help? We don't know any of this yet. So that's where we have to go through the second phase, which is the diagnostic phase, before we ever talk about any, let's call it treatment. And in that terms of that, I'm talking about your program or your offer or your opportunity, the solution that you would offer to someone. How can you offer a treatment if you haven't determined the problem, the diagnosis? So as I approach sales, given that I was a medical doctor for over 25 years and not had a sales background, this is how I approach it. It's all the common denominator between my practicing medicine and creating a successful company, a health coach, becoming a six-figure health coach, and then creating a successful health professional academy. The common denominator is problem solving. That's what we do. We help people solve their problems, whether that's as a doctor in the medical field or as a health coach, you're solving their problems, whatever those problems are. First, we got to find out what the problem is and if we can solve it. All right. So that's the first step, is the introduction. They're feeling comfortable. They know you're going to ask the questions first. And then at the end, they're going to have all the time that they want to ask as many questions that they want. But you will be able to answer them more intelligently because you'll have a framework of their situation. So then the next phase is the bulk of the call, is the diagnostic phase. So the purpose of this diagnostic phase is to determine what's the problem. So you're wanting to know what is the problem, and you're going to be determining, do I know how to solve that problem? Do they want that problem solved? And if all of those are true, do I want to solve that problem for them? So if that's what we're trying to determine, and if they have a problem that they want to solve, that you know how to solve, that you want to solve, by all means, have a heart and offer to solve it. And then that's a very non-salesy sales call. So that's the intent. Those are the things that we're trying to determine from our diagnostic dozen. All right. So as we dive into the diagnostic phase, we're going to say, what is the problem that they have? That's a good question to say. What is the situation? So the first step is really figure out, what's the situation? Why are you even on this call? What led them to book the call? What is the number one challenge with respect to their health? And then you want to dive deeper on that. So how is that impacting their life? Is it a big problem or a little problem? How urgent is it that we solve this problem? It's fine. If it takes forever, that's fine. Or no, I need to solve it right now. All of those things are going to determine whether they become your client or not. So what's the problem? How urgent is it? How bad is it? And sometimes, as you're asking those questions, you determine, this is outside of my scope of practice. This is either too severe or not in my wheelhouse. And that's fine. Keep asking the questions. And then at the end, we're going to determine whether we offer it or not, or whether we refer them to someone else, so on. So we now know what their problem is. And then we also want to know, what would they ideally like life to look like, their health to look like, their dream come true, their solution. What is that? And in that process, we're trying to determine the gap from where they are now to where they want to be, which is what we said in the frame. We're going to determine from where you are now to where you want to be, what's the best way to get you there. So we got to determine these 2 points. So the first point is that problem point. And I will say, if there's no gap, there's no sale. That's it. If there's a gap, there's probably a sale. So if their life is horrific, they have horrible pain, they've got horrible health, but they're okay with staying there. So right now it's bad, but what they want is just to keep being the same. There's no gap, no sale. If it's really bad and they want something phenomenal, they want greater health, they want to get out of pain, they want to lose the 100 pounds, the 5 pounds, but they really want it. If there's a gap, then there's a sale. If life is phenomenal, their health is amazing, and it's good just as it is, there's no sale. If life is phenomenal and their health is amazing, but they want to take it to the next level, win a competition, do a triathlon, there's a sale. So we just want to determine, is there a gap? Now, we can't say, do you have a gap? Because they don't know what we're talking about. But we're looking at what is the problem? How is it impacting them? We want to look at, what have they already tried to solve this? And then, did that work? Did it not work? This is not the time, by the way, to let them know what you do or how you offer it. Or like, this is not the time to say, oh, I wouldn't do what they do. They don't know what they're doing over there. And in fact, this is an opportunity to watch for some red flags. Because if they've done 100 different things and they're trash talking all of the other people that they've ever been to before, you're going to be added to that list. So if they've tried all sorts of things and nothing has ever worked for them, and it's worked for other people, well, what's the common denominator? Now, some of those things may truly not have been great, but a lot of times people will say, well, how's this going to be different? And the question really is, how are they going to be different? Because if they are really ready to show up, and really, if nothing has worked before, it may just have been there wasn't a gap, or we didn't pull on the gap. If somebody comes in with possible appendicitis and it's grumbling and they got a little bit of a tummy pain, and you are the examining physician, and I know the appendix is not my arm, but I'm just trying to be in the in the screen here so you can see it, but you just lightly touch their belly and just say, so is this okay? And they're like, yeah, it's okay. And then they leave and their appendix bursts. That's not cool. So when we discover that they've got a pain, we kind of got to get in there and press on that pain point so that we can discover. And we kind of got to go, does this hurt? Does this hurt? So that if it does hurt, they can determine, I want to take care of this problem. I want to take care of this, weight issue, this inflammation, this anxiety, this blood sugar issue. So we got to get in there and press on it a little bit to determine, does it hurt? And does it hurt enough that you want to do something about it? Or, no, it's fine. There's nothing there. It's nothing that I need to address. So that's what we want to get at with these questions. How urgent is it? How severe is it? Because those are going to factor into your decision of whether you're going to offer a spot in your program or not. So we don't want to rush too quickly to just saying, and what would life be like, all roses and sunshine? We really want to spend a little bit of time there, not tormenting them, but accurately determining, is there anything going on here? And remember, they get to want what they want. If they are fine living with, horrible mood and anxiety and hormonal imbalance and menopause and migraines and all the rest of it, if they're okay with it, all right. But if it's a problem, then we really got to look at, okay, what is the cost of keeping this problem? What are they trying to do right now to fix it? What is the impact that this problem is having? And sometimes it's having um uh, their job, they're missing work because of their migraines or their IBS. They're missing work, which means they're missing income, which means, they're struggling more. Sometimes it impacts their relationships. They can't go out with friends and loved ones and spouses. They can't do those things. They can't travel. So it's impacting it. They can't go to their kids' field trips because uh, they have a neuropathy, they have a pain, they have exhaustion. So, what is it costing them? They're falling asleep at the wheel. Who else is being impacted with them keeping going with the problem? And the truth is, their current environment gave rise to that problem. And, they might not know how to get on the other side of it. That's why they're coming to you. So, the likelihood of them fixing this, if it's significant on their own, is extremely low. We all know trial and error is going to be way, way more costly in time and money. We know that. Unless it's screaming urgent, life threatening, then all of a sudden people pay attention. But if it's not, people have a tendency to put themselves last, not put themselves on the priority list at all, and they will do for others, and they will never attend to this weight issue, inflammation, pain until it gets to a serious crisis. And we don't need for it to take that long and get to that point. But that's where we got to press on it a little bit and go, does this hurt now? Rather than waiting and having it burst and causing a catastrophe later. So, some of the things to ask are, what are they doing to assist with it now? What are the medications? What's wrong with the medication? Does it have side effects? Does it have a cost? One of our coaches, she helped one of her clients get off a $600 medication, $600 a month medication. So, can you imagine if this woman lived another 20 years, which with her life expectancy, very reasonable to expect that she would? I think we calculated that that saved her $144,000. So, whatever the cost of your program is, it's not that. And so, by not only that, she gets to spend the next 20 years without that problem. Not only without the meds, but without the problem. So, not all medications do people get off of, but a lot of these lifestyle conditions are amenable. And so, it's really important to see what it's costing them, and honestly, some people would rather just take a pill. They're probably not your client. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to clean up the diet. They don't want to do those things. And if that's okay with them, it's okay with you. Have that person step aside so you can make room for someone who is serious, but really looking at and helping them come to a conclusion and a determination. What is it costing them to keep this problem? Why are they on the call with you in the first place? What is the problem with the problem? What is the problem with having that problem that they have and continuing on with it? That's your role on mastering this. That's why it's coming from love. You really care for this person and you know a thing or two about this, and you want to determine, what is it costing them? Time, financing, relationships, job. What is it costing them? Not able to, their feet hurt, they're not able to go on vacations, and so on. So what is the cost? What have they already tried so far? What worked? What didn't? A question I love to ask is, why are you not already there yet? Why haven't you already solved this on your own? Because a lot of times the people call it objection at the end is, and or their response at the end, if they don't do it with you, they're going to say, I'm just going to do this on my own. If they have a problem and they're not opting in for you, then most of them have a fantasy that they're going to get this solution on their own. So it's a good idea when we're asking these questions, what stopped them so far? Why did they still have this problem? What is the missing link? Why haven't you already been able to solve this on your own? And they may say something like, I don't know what to do. Awesome, because you probably do. So at least they know they don't know what to do. And so you want to look for what their answer is. And the closer it looks like, I don't know what to do about this, sometimes they'll say things like, well, I know what to do. I just am not doing it. I know I should eat healthy and eat clean, but I just don't have the willpower. Okay, so don't leave it there, because at the end of the call, when you offer it, they're like, you know what? I know what to do, which they don't totally. They don't. I know what to do. So I'm not going to pay someone to give me willpower because I know I don't have any. And so I know that it's not going to work for me. So I'm not going to pay anyone because I don't believe I can get the results. So don't just leave it. If they start saying something like, I don't have willpower, dive into it, peel the onion, go deep. Why do you think you don't have willpower? What makes you say that? And feel free to add your expertise depending on what the particular problem is. And I often use the example with my clients is because if they would say that willpower, like after my fourth child was born, and then a year later, I hadn't lost the weight. So I'd gained 30 pounds. I'd gained, you know, with each child, I lost all but 5 pounds, but times 4 kids, 20 pounds, plus 10 from high school, that's 30 pounds. And it wasn't coming off on its own. People said, oh, yeah, it'll come off on its own. Took 9 months to come on, takes 9 months to come off. Yeah, it wasn't coming off. So I had to be intentional with that. And I was still, this was pre health coach days. I was a doctor, but I wasn't a health coach in these days. And um, I know that if I had starchy carbs, sugary foods, that would spike my blood sugar. And then I was powerless. It's not about willpower, it's the physiology. If you think about it, so we used to have an ultrasound tech, and I don't know if it was every Friday. It seemed like it was frequent, but maybe it wasn't every Friday. But she would bring in uh, she would go up to the top shelf in the ultrasound reading room, and she would bring it down. So the doctors and the techs would have this room. This would be where we were reading the films back then. And now it's all digital. And she'd get the this white dish, and she would bring in Friday afternoon. She'd rip open the package of red licorice, and the aroma just wafted over. Now, I don't even care about red licorice. I don't even care about red licorice. But after a full week, after working like crazy, after being so hungry, after skipping through, and after having a sugar spike diet, not such a low glycemic diet, but closer to the standard American diet that spikes your blood sugar. When she whopped that licorice down on that dish, and my back was turned to her, so my seat at my computer was my back was turned to her, but I could smell it. And I wouldn't go up and get it right away, but the next time I had to check a patient, go check the patient, and as I came back, I grabbed that licorice, just nonchalantly grabbed that licorice, and looking for an opportunity. And it was ridiculous. I would be looking at films, I would be working, I would be dictating, and part of my mind was on this darn red licorice. It was ridiculous. It was a distraction. But I was my so what happens when you have, and I digress now, but this is how I could give this information back to my client to let them know it's okay. Because as a lot of you know, when you take the sugar, you spike the sugar, you know, we stop burning fat for fuel. Oops, that's not what we want to do. And insulin drives back that sugar that's in our bloodstream into the cells, and we're now low glycemic. And so it's the sugar spike crash. It's up and down. So now you have a legit lower blood sugar. It's crashed, and your body is screaming and craving for another hit. And you're powerless. And I'm going to grab the other piece of licorice, right? So when I cleaned up my diet, made it intentional, lost the 30 pounds, and was eating clean, I no longer had those blood sugar fluctuations. And then when the tech wafted down that red licorice, I'm sitting at my desk and lean, but low glycemic, clean eating, nothing. No desire to eat it whatsoever. So if somebody had asked me previously, I would have just thought, I just don't have willpower. But that was not what was happening. Physiologically, my body was craving it. But when we know better, we can do better. So as you're on a sales call talking to someone and they think the reason is just willpower, at the end of that sales call, they're not going to buy from you because they are not going to buy willpower that they know you can't give them. But when we share a story to say, hey, it's not about the willpower or whatever their thing is, because whatever that idea is, if they don't know enough, that's a perfect answer because they know they don't know enough. They are consciously incompetent. There's several layers of mastery for someone. So initially, people are unconsciously incompetent. Health coaches are often, as a rule, unconsciously incompetent. They don't know how to have a successful practice. They don't know how to create a six-figure practice, but they don't know they don't know. They graduate, they assume this is going to be easy. I'll just do this and I'll coach and it'll be awesome and I'll make a whole bunch of money. And since 95% of the people that come across our desk don't have a single paying client, whether they graduated a week ago or a decade ago, and I'm not exaggerating at all, that's the reality of it. So, but they don't know what they don't know. And they don't know. They don't know. So that's unconsciously incompetent. And so in this willpower issue with the blood sugar example, these people don't know they don't know. They don't know that, hey, when we stabilize that blood sugar, you got this. Now, we're not going to teach them all that on a sales call. That's not the purpose of it. But your job is to see if you can determine, why didn't they get results already? Like, why haven't they been able to do this on their own? Because if they've tried all the things that you were going to suggest to them, well, you maybe you don't know how to solve this. But from your perspective, if we're talking to someone and you're working in your zone of genius and you're trying not to be everything to everyone, you're going to be able to pinpoint more accurately, like I could to my health coach clients or to my clients when I was a health coach about this whole willpower issue. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I used to think it was willpower too. And then I share that quick little story. And it's like, but when we change some things up, we don't get those sugar spikes. When we do some swaps and we eat more low glycemic, and we're not triggered to have that craving for it. And so, because there I was, I'm the same human being. The only thing that changed was the diet and the precursor. So you really want to assess that. The other question that you want to ask is, you know, I like to ask it like on a scale of 1 to 10. A scale of 1 to 10, how badly do you want to get on the other side of this problem? How significant is it for you to solve this? And with 1 being, "It's okay if I stay exactly where I am right now," and 10 being like, "No, I have to get on the other side of it. This is not okay to stay right here." Um, that's a very important number, and I will say a lot of times people misinterpret the question. It's not, "How likely am I to succeed?" No, that's irrelevant because they don't know how to succeed, otherwise they wouldn't be on the call. It's not like, "Well, I think I'm about a 70%." That number is really important. I'll give you an example. Like my husband, amazing guy. But if I said scale of 1 to 10, how serious are you about creating a health coaching practice? It's a 0. Like he's not trying to do that at all. So this just determines how significant is it for them. If it's a 10, they will buy. They will start because it is not at all okay for them to spend another minute like this. But if it's less than that, they probably will. So if they say a 7 or an 8, clarify for them. So are you saying you are 30% okay with things being exactly the way things are? The pain level, the this, the that, all the things that they were talking about. If a year from now you're exactly okay with being in the exact same spot, you don't want, you're fine with all of it being just the way it is that what you're saying? And just clarify. Because if they're 30% or if they're an 8 out of 10 and they're 20% okay with being in the same spot next year, they will be. They will be. So a lot of times though, they'll just say like they'll misinterpret that question. So they get to want what they want. And they might be, and it might be significant. Um, maybe they want to lose 300 pounds. Uh, And that could be a significant, problem, but then the timing of it. So let's say so that, like, the next question I would ask is, how soon do you want to get some results, like, start to get some relief? How soon do you want those results? So that, urgency. And if they're 300 pounds overweight and they want to lose weight, so they're a 10 out of 10, it is not okay for them to be that weight a year from now. Now, bear in mind, they probably spent more than a year gaining that 300 pounds or whatever their problem is. So they spent a lifetime getting to this point. And by default, it's probably just going to get worse. At best, it'll stay the same, but on their own, it's not going to get better. Statistically, it's not going to get better. It's going to be uh, same or worse. So, how soon do they want it? If they have 300 pounds to lose and they're a 10 out of 10, but you say, how soon do you want these results? They might say, I want to get on the other side of it, but right now, my house is being foreclosed on and this and this, or it just burned down or whatever. And I really want to do this, but I can't do it now. So it's a timing thing. And so we got to work around that. So what is that? So it might be a big problem, but they got a bigger problem. They don't want to, they do not want to address it. Sometimes they can address 2 things at once, but that's what you're going to ask them is this a priority? Do you want to work on this right now? Or is this not a priority for whatever reason? No judgment on it. If they have a significant problem, but they don't want it solved, just let them be and focus on the people who do want your help. And then towards the end, I like to ask them, like, what is your best idea to solve this? What is their best idea to get on the other side of this? What is their best idea to lose the weight or to get out of pain or to um, whatever their issue is, heal their gut? What is their best idea? And in an ideal world, it sounds something like hire you because we've gone through this whole process. They say, "This is a horrible problem. I haven't been able to solve it on my own. I've tried all of these things. They haven't worked. I don't know what to do. I'm a 10 out of 10. I want it ASAP. Um, and I don't know. I don't have an idea. I was hoping you could help me." So that's an ideal scenario. They don't always say that, but all that you're looking for there is they don't have a alternative idea. They don't have a viable option. And once we've got to that point, it's time to transition to the final phase, the close, the third and final phase. So then you'll have made some notes. And by the way, I recommend taking notes. You can even create a little template for yourself after a while because you'll know the common answers. So you can do more of a check mark or a circle. But you want to highlight the words they use. So I used to, when I was a health coach, I would take my little notebook here and I would circle or highlight the keywords they used, and I would come back to that. And if they used the word exhausted, you use the word exhausted. And so at this point, we're going to transition. And we want to make sure that you accurately heard them. And we give an opportunity, we kind of do a summary, and we give them an opportunity to correct anything that we might have gotten wrong. And so you could say something like, "What I hear you saying is your problem is XYZ," and you list all those things. And what you would really like is ABC. And this really matters to you. You are a 10 out of 10 and you want it ASAP. You want it be on the other side of this in 3 months or in a year, whatever. And I don't hear a surefire idea that you have to solve this in your time frame. Did I hear you correctly? And this is an opportunity where there's that rapport that we established at the beginning. They're like, "Oh my gosh, someone's finally listening to me." And they, if nothing else, felt heard. And that's healing in itself for someone to hear you and to lay it out and to have that clarity is huge. This is a very valuable call, especially when you've dedicated the time, you're focusing on them, and they're not multitasking, shoe shopping, or driving down the highway. That's why this has potential. If we're going to spend this time, let's make the most out of it and give generously, lead with love. If you misinterpreted anything, there's an opportunity for them to course correct. Then you can let them know just briefly in general terms, "Here's what I do." You can reference at the beginning, I said I'd let you know what I do, what I've got going on, and you can share what I teach as a power statement, but you share basically what you do. And then you can ask them. Now, we're not talking about pricing at this point. And then we can ask them, "At the beginning, I said you could ask me any questions. What questions do you have?" And give them an opportunity to ask any questions that they want. And that's why I always built in a buffer of time so that I could answer each and every question. And the key questions that indicate that somebody is interested in this is they're like, "How does this work? How much is your program?" Now is a good time to ask, "How much is your program?" Not at the beginning, because they don't even know what this is. You don't even know if you can help them. That would be, if you were a doctor, that would be malpractice. If to prescribe a treatment before determining what the situation is, that's no good. So at the end is when you dive into uh, you ask them if they have any other questions, and if they are wanting your help by asking, "How much is it? How does it work? How often would we meet?" That's a clue to proceed to the next phase. If they're not asking you any questions about what you do, if you've had this call and you're like, no, I don't have any questions. It's been really good. I think that's really great." You do not offer your program. Now, if there's some kind of a disconnect where all indications throughout the entire time were like they really want it and this, and you can just do a double check. Okay, it sounds good. Before I let you go, uh, it sounded like you had this problem and this dream come true and you were looking for a solution, but so I'm just confirming you're not interested in what it is that I do. And sometimes they'll say, "Oh, no, 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 I thought you were going to get to that." So a lot of people are used to being sold to, and they're waiting for the arm twisting, which we're not going to do. So sometimes you have to clear. But if they're just saying, "No, no, I'm fine. I've just got," if they don't have any questions, we just let them go. Thank you very much. It's been great to chat with you. If this ever becomes more of a problem where you wanting any assistance with it, circle back around and we're happy to help. And then you can just keep them in your lead pool of followers. Because as it progresses and gets to the point where it is costing them more time, money, pain in some way that is now prompting them to actually act, now now they're ripe and ready and the timing is right. So those are that's kind of the framework. Now, if they are asking the price, and sometimes they might have a few other questions and then they get to the price. So now they're like, how much is it? So there's a couple of ways that I like to frame this. First of all, you want to know how much your program is. That's another time for another call, another episode. We'll talk about pricing. But you want to know what your price of your program is. You don't want to be making it up on the fly. You want to be clear going in. How much is it? And you might have a single payment and you might have a payment plan option. But also, it is a true fact that you can only work with so many people at a time. And you will get best results when initially, especially, you're working with a small group of people at a time. So, a common response that sets your potential client up for failure and never getting the results, a common response, and you may have heard it before, is, "This sounds great. Let me think about it." Now, that's pretty much the kiss of death for them that they are opting. So, we're going to guide them forward and prevent that scenario. I will say there's actually nothing to think about. I won't say that like that, but it's true. There really isn't anything to think about. If they have questions, they should ask. So you would clarify. So what is it that you aren't sure of? And you want to clear up any uncertainties that they have so that they can make a comfortable decision. We're never going to arm twist them. We only ever want to be their best idea. That's why we ask what their best idea is. And if they have a better idea, I think I should do Weight Watchers. Then we say, okay, that's good. I think you should do that. If that doesn't work, you come circle back around. You don't need to compete with anyone else. You only ever want to be their best idea. If they're thinking about another program and they do yours instead, they're going to self sabotage themselves. I knew I should have just done that cheaper program, right? And instead, let them go do the other program. And if that doesn't work, then they can come back around and you are their only option. You are their only option. So they're going to get results because they need to show up because this is their last chance. And for most health coaches, by the time to get to you, they've already done everything else. They've already seen all the doctors. They've already done all the other things first. And now the buck stops here. You are their last hope. A lot of times, this is very common because people don't know what a health coach is. So, that might change in the future. But right now, by the time they come to you as a health coach, they've already exhausted pretty much all of their other options. But that's why we asked that question just before that. So, how do we prevent the I got to think about it? So there's a couple of ways. One is the urgency that we asked for before, pressing on the pain point, getting an accurate assessment, only inviting them if they have a serious problem. You know how to solve it. They want it solved. All of those things have to be check, check, check before you invite them. So we just want to clarify what is their actual question. Sometimes they need to speak to a spouse. I'm going to do a whole other video podcast episode on handling objections because that's a whole other topic. So we will get to that one. But if they are wanting it and they're just saying because it's a knee-jerk reaction to talk about, we can prevent that. So one of my clients actually used this in her favor. So she had been starting out and her was doing well. She's actually one of our six-figure health coaches. She was a, I don't want to vet her out, but she was one of our early six-figure health coaches. And her prices for her program were gradually inching up and up and up because your program's always getting better, but the price is always going up. So it's always fair because the best time for them to join is always now. It's now. And it's the same price for everybody. That keeps it fair. Otherwise, if you adjust based on people's sob stories, get ready. Your job is now to listen to everybody's sob stories and charge less and less and less. And they don't get results and you get depressed from hearing all their sob stories. So you keep it the same for everybody in the same cohort class, but you're continually improving. And I have other guidelines that I teach as to how do you know when to increase your price. Again, we'll do that in a future episode as well. Now, again, if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the comments or ask us or visit drshaunna.com. And there's an opportunity to ask questions there. But even if you just ask right in the comments here, uh, I'll create a whole episode on that. I'm happy to answer all the questions. I could talk for hours and days on all of these subjects. There's so many little nuances to all of this, but the basic principles are pretty simple. And then you get better with practice. So to prevent the I'm going to think about it, and just as an aside, out of the thousands of people we've talked to over the years, despite their assurances that absolutely they're coming in on Monday, if they didn't at least put down a deposit and they left without a financial commitment and they were going to think about anything without a deposit, not one person ever came back. Life gets busy. They get back into the world that gave rise to the problem. They get back into the land of the muggles there with their family and with the issues and with them putting themselves last on the list. So to prevent this, to hold the space, to lead with love, to set the framework that sets them up for success, as you are about to share the price, when they say, how much is it? You can say the investment to take you from where you are now, and you go over that list of where they are to where you want to be. In 2 months, it will be X price, let's say 2,000. And but for right now, it is this price, let's say 1,500. And this actually happened to one of our early six-figure health coaches. And she knew that given her conversion rates, she should be charging more. Her prices should be going up. She had so many people saying yes that she should increase the price so that she could maintain delivering great results and she didn't have too many people in more than she could handle. So, but she could not bring herself at that time to say 2,000. She couldn't bring herself to say 2,000. So she always just stayed at that price. So she would say, but she learned our process. I taught her our framework. I taught her the loving invitation call. And she was in the habit of saying this. So she had someone and she said, they asked how much it was. And she said, well, in 2 months, it's going to be 2,000. But for right now, it's just 1,500. And da, 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 da. And the woman said, okay, well, that's great. And she did not buy. But what happened is this woman came back to her a couple of months later and they get back on the call and they're going through and they're doing another one. And the woman says, so I was wanting to get started. How much is your program again? 2,000. And so all my client had to do is go nod her head and say, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So she never actually had to say it. And by the time she got that first one in, then it was easy for her to say it. She had that belief and so on. So this way, now it's very important the timing of this. So you want to say in 2 months, it's going to be a higher price because it will be going up as you're getting clients and you're converting and you're helping. So in 2 months, it's going to be this price, but for right now, it is just this lower price. Now, if they want to think about it, take all the time you need. It's just going to cost you more. And if that's okay with them, that's okay with you. That's all good too. But this way, it's not a open-ended offer forever. They can't come back in 10 years and want that price. It's now or never, really. And in reality, it, it's now. It's now o'clock. So you want to have that urgency. And you'll say, and sometimes people will discount for being able to pay on the call. That's the best. That really is the best. They're most likely to succeed if they get in right there. Uh, I would never bump it out beyond a week. Just say, we can hold that at most for a week. And what I do, and this is something that um, I was never taught this from a mentor or anything, but it is one of my rules, and it came from my personal experience of years as both as a doctor and as a health coach. And one of the things as a doctor especially you don't want to have happen is a patient get lost to follow up. And especially when you're following some things that are really bad. And you know that it's usually an administrative thing, which causes somebody to miss an appointment, and that could be really bad. And so we were always, for certain things, it really mattered. If we're following something, a tumor growth or something, it's really important that we don't lose them, that, if we're monitoring it. I was in the diagnostic imaging radiology side of things in ultrasound. But as a health coach, I found the same thing. And I found if we didn't set the a date to book another call, and let's say in a week, then people would say, "I'll think about it. I'll get back to you." And they never did. So this one little tip here could increase your conversion rates from like 5% to 80%. I am not joking, not even a little bit. And it will massively accelerate your practice. And it is such a simple thing. And my rule is never leave one call without booking the next one. Just have that as a habit. Hold their hand. And really, that's all the way through working with them. You know, book the have always the next call booked, have it known when they're going to meet, because in between I found with my clients, no news was not good news. They defaulted back to their old ways. So the better that we can, and I call it carrying the egg. This is such a delicate process, this process of sales. I feel like it's carrying a delicate little egg. We don't want to smash the egg. So you want to carry the egg all the way through. And one of the things where you can really, ideally, they bring it, they decide on the call, but maybe they got to check with the spouse, etc. Maybe they have to shift money around on to a credit card, something like that. So the way that you solve that is having them book that first coaching session, that orientation call a week in the future. That works extremely well. And then you can say, if you decide this is not for you, all good, go ahead and cancel that call. But otherwise, as you will get started right away. If you have modules, they can get instant access to the modules, and we will get started. And we set that first coaching session right up there because we want to nurture them all the way through. The sales call is the first step in the transformation. That's the first act of service that you will do for this person, and they get to determine how long that you will serve them for. So that is an incredible tip. Now, one thing that sometimes my new clients, I say it just all like I've been saying it, but the one thing that they'll miss, and I just want you to know this, because if you get the order wrong on a couple of these things, it can have disastrous results. It cannot go so well. So when I shared that little role play example of, in 2 months it's going to be 2,000, but for right now it's 1,500. Now notice that's the order I set it in. But sometimes people will forget and they'll say, "How much is your program?" And they'll say the price of the program. And then person will say, okay, let me think about it. And then the coach will go, oh, yeah, I forgot. I was going to tell him in 2 months. And now, if you say, so they're like, okay, let me think about it. And if you say, well, the price is going up to 2000, well, now you're a jerk. You're kind of a jerk. But we can predict that people will be saying, I want to think about it. It's a knee jerk reaction. It's just like you go into a store. How are you? I'm fine. Can I help you? No, just looking. Like it's it's a role. So saying I need to think about it, they're not actually going to think about it. Like 99% are not actually going to think about it. They're going to forget it. They don't mean to forget it. They at the call they legit think they're going to think about it, but they're not actually going to do that. So it's really important. And through practice, you'll get to see that. But before we drop a bunch of eggs and lose a bunch of sales for you and have you give up and never create that 6-figure health coaching practice or make a significant income or impact, let's solve it right now with these really great tips. So you'll just want to remember, say, in the future, it's going to be this price, but right now it's this price. And then you say, now here's the other thing. When you say the price, you'll say the investment to take you from where you are now to where you want to be in 2 months is going to be 2000, but right now it's just 1500 and it's 3 monthly payments of 500 and a single payment of 1200 or something like that. And then you say, what other questions do you have? And then you drink water and shut up. That's the process. Because people need time to process it. You've spent this hour with them. They've gotten more clear on this problem, sometimes that they've had for years. It's come to this delicate moment of truth. Are they actually going to take a stand? Are they actually going to get on the other side of it? Or are they going to choose to struggle with it ongoing without you? So we're bringing to this, we want to embrace them with love. We want to make it clear they get to decide what they want, but we just want to get clear on what is it that they're saying yes and no to. And the problem is most early eager health coaches are nervous to say the price. And then instead of being quiet, they feel the awkward pause, they say the price, and then they'll say, so what do you think? And what do you think? And it's a really good deal. And I really do this and I do this and I do this. And have you ever been in a store or trying to buy something like significant and in your mind, you really like it and love it and people buy with emotion and they justify with logic. So you fall in love with this vehicle or whatever it is, a clothing item or jewelry, or you fall in love with something and you're like, oh, I really want it. And you're in your mind trying to decide, like, is this right for you or not? And the salesperson's just going on and on and on and on. And you just feel like, shush, like, just shush, just leave me alone for a minute. I got to think about this. So you need a moment to think about this. You don't need weeks to think about it. You'll never be more clear than you are on that sales call right there and then. That is the most clear you're ever going to be, is right on that sales call. So the little trick that I teach our health coaches at the Health Professional Academy is after you say the price, then you say, what other questions do you have? Because we said at the end, you can ask any questions. So we're going to say, what other questions do you have? We can say that calmly and confidently. And then we're going to grab our water. We're going to take our sip and breathe, because they need at least 7 seconds. And most coaches don't give them even 4 seconds before they start talking. So that allows them to pause comfortably, because we just didn't drop a bomb of a price. We said, what other questions do you have? And it's normal if you ask that people will need a pause to think about, what other questions do I have? And you don't expect a response. And if you're drinking water, you are not going to say something you shouldn't. And it gives you something to do. And it just buys that time. And it's not an awkward pause where you're both doing a stare down and nobody's saying anything. You're drinking water. It's all cool. For those listening in on podcast, I'm drinking water here. So, those are some of my best tips to help you master the art of sales. Establish rapport in the introduction, lay out the framework, take the loving lead of the entire process. Then, phase two, dive into the diagnostic phase. Ask those clarifying questions. Determine what's the problem. What's the problem with the problem? What is the desired outcome? What have they tried? What's worked? What hasn't worked? How badly do they want it? How quickly do they want it? What other ideas do they have to solve it? And then transition to the close. Make sure that you've heard them correctly. And then in the closing, you share what you do. You ask them if they have questions. You if they ask what you do, then that's when, or how much it is, that's when you share the price of your program, sharing the higher price first, the price that it's going to be first, but right now it's this, and remembering to book the next orientation call right away the next day if you can, if they're joining. But if they're needing time to shift money around or think about it in air quotes, then book that orientation call for the following week. And at that orientation call, they can cancel it if they don't join, but they have to remember about that call. They're not going to just forget about it because it's on their calendar. And you have every right at the time of the orientation call to call them. Hey, I saw that we had this call, just wanting to double check, are you wanting to move forward or not? I'm going to assume it's a no. So most people will politely not ghost you, but occasionally will, but they have to do that. But if you don't book that next call and it's open-ended, a week goes by and they haven't called you. And then 2 weeks goes by. So you then reach out to them and now you are chasing. And one of my mentors taught me, you are the prize and the prize never chases. And inadvertently, you've gotten tricked into chasing them. You're texting them. Did you decide yet? Do you want to do this yet? And it's annoying. And they'll be like, go away. And they don't want to talk to you. But if you've set up that appointment while you're on the call for the next call, if you've set up that appointment time, then it's a mutual meeting at the same time. And if they're missing their appointment, then that's on them. But you have every right. It's as a professional, it is important for you to show up on that call. And if it's there, then they're like, oh yeah, I meant to get back to that person. And it's a yes or a no. And sometimes they will buy on that call right at the last minute. That's happened as well. And that way you're not chasing. And that way you have clients begging to work with you. Even how we share the price and make them ask for the price. In that framework, we're not pushing what we do on them. We're not salesy. We're not saying it's here, it's this many modules, it slices and dices. No, instead, we share what we do. We ask the questions. We say in big, broad terms, I help these people with this problem get this dream come true. What other questions do you have? And if they have no questions, we're not telling them what we do. You got to make them beg, make them beg, make them beg. Because if they're saying, please, can you help me? Us, as heart-centered entrepreneurs, we're all in on that. If somebody asks you for help as healers, we're 2 thumbs up. We really want to do that. And so that's easy for us to say yes. So this framework has served me and our clients and the clients of our clients extremely well. This is at the foundation core basis of how we've been able to help health coaches go from 0 income, 0 clients, 0 niche to 6 and multiple 6 figures, working on average 3 days a week without burning out. mastering art of sales calls is a key critical skill, and you don't have to be salesy, but you do want to leverage your heartfelt nature as a healer and your ability to get accurate information and make the best determination for this client, patient, person as to what is in the best interest for them. And sometimes you are not the best idea for them. It is something or someone else. And it feels really good to have those conversations and be able to refer to a device, to a supplement, to a doctor, to another coach. It feels really great and aligned in integrity. So it is worth practicing. If you're like, this sounds really good, but I still need more help with this. I get it that these sales skills are important. And I love this detailed summary, but I want more help. I am serious about making a difference and I want more help and guidance with our this is such an important skill. Every week we have a sales clinic where our coaches bring their sales calls to me and I tell them exactly what I would say on those calls, often just in advance, and then we celebrate their clients that come in the following day. So if that is something that you're wanting, there may be a link below. If not, you can always go to drshaunna.com and check that out. There's an opportunity to speak with us, have a strategy session, and you could even apply to work with us. We only work with a small number of people, but we are committed to helping this world be a healthier, happier place. And we're looking for health coaches who have a burning desire to help people be healthy so that we can get you and your healing gifts out into the world. And mastering the art of sales skills is exactly one of those niches. So, with that, have a fantastic week and be good for you.